Good evening to you all. We will do a video presentation on ECS 211 Introduction to Curriculum Theory and Practices. Title of the presentation is on standard-based assessment. How can standard-based assessment contribute to quality education in Papua New Guinea? Here we are three in the group. I am John Songi. Will do a presentation on objectives of the presentation. We'll go look at the introduction, and then there are three types of assessment. And the second presenter is Romalin Saune. Romalin Saune will do a presentation on how standard-based assessment differs from traditional assessment methods, and how standard-based assessment contributes to quality education in PNG context. And the final presenter is Erika Kuaf. She will do a presentation on developing assessment items aligned with specific learning standard, and do up the conclusion, and then finally come up with the recommendations, and then we will end up with the references. Okay, the presentation objectives. We have 4 main objectives. We'll define the standard-based assessment, then look at the standard-based curriculum. And then the second one is we will describe how standard-based assessment differ each type of assessment, the assessment of learning, assessment for learning, and then assessment as learning. And the third one is explain the ways in which standard-based assessment contributes to quality education in the PNG context, with specific examples relevant to primary and secondary classrooms. And the fourth one will develop assessment items aligned with specific learning standard. Okay, introductions. Standard-based, before we further go on, we look at the SBC or standard-based curriculum. The standard-based curriculum in Papua New Guinea is designed to enhance the quality of education by establishing clear, measurable standards that outline the skills, knowledge students are expected to achieve at each level of schooling. And this approach contrasts with the outcome-based education or OBE previously used, which focused more broadly on end goals without clear benchmark for progression. Under SBC, we have a standard-based assessment. Standard-based assessment is an approach to evaluating student progress by measuring their knowledge, skills, and competency against clear defined learning standards, unlike a non-reference assessment, which compares student performance with that of their peers. Standard-based assessment focused on whether students meet predetermined criteria or standard for learning. Okay, the next section is we look at three types of assessment. We have 3 types of assessment. Is standard of learning or AOL, and then standard for learning AFL, and standard as learning. Each type has unique purpose and applications, contributing to a comprehensive assessment approach with the learning process. Okay, assessment of learning is a summative assessment used to evaluate and document students' achievement at the end of a learning period or unit, to determine if learning standards are met and to provide a final grade or judgment of a student performance. Examples: end of term exam in mathematics. At the end of a semester, students take a standardized test that assess their understanding of all topics covered, providing a final score. Or we have practical tests in TVET sections. Students complete a final carpentry project to demonstrate master skills. And assessment for learning is a formative assessment used continuously during the learning process to monitor student progress and provide feedback for improvements. Purpose is to guide instructional decisions and help students improve by identifying strengths and areas for growth. Examples: we have like weekly quiz in English, like short quizzes are given each week to gauge understandings and allow students to review challenging areas. Or class discussion in science, like teacher asks questions during a lesson on ecosystem, assisting understanding in real time and classifying as needed. Or we have assessment-based learning. Assessment and reflection progress where students monitor and reflect on their own learning, setting goals to take ownership of their progress, to develop students' meta-connections and self-assessment skills, fostering independent learning. Examples of assessment-based learning are like learning journals in history. Students write reflections on what they learn each week, noting areas they find challenging and setting goals. Or peer review in art. Students evaluate each other's artworks, providing feedback that encourage self-reflections and personal goal settings. Yes.
I will continue from here. How SBA differs from traditional assessment methods. So here we will look at the aspect of it. Purpose and focus. The purpose of SBA or standard-based assessment, it measures student performance against specific criteria or standards, while in traditional assessment, it often measures students' performance relative to peers. The focus of SBA, or standard-based assessment, is mastery of skills and competency, while in traditional assessment, it overall scores or rankings. Feedback of it. In SBA or standard-based assessment, it provides targeted feedback based on standards, while in traditional assessment, it limited feedback usually focused on overall score. The assessment style of SBA or standard-based assessment, it often includes formative assessments to guide learning, while in traditional assessment, it primarily summative with limited continuous assessment. Progression of SBA or standard-based assessment, students advance upon achieving competency, while in traditional assessment, students advance based on time or grade level, not necessarily competency. How SBA or standard-based assessment contributes to quality education in PNG context. Standard-based assessment supports quality education in Papua New Guinea by providing clear learning targets and focusing on competency-based learning, which aligns with PNG's educational goals of developing employable skills and lifelong learning abilities. Here we have 4 points to discuss. The first point is clear learning pathways. Example, in primary classroom, in a grade 3 literacy program, students may have a standard to identify main ideas in a passage. Through SBA, students receive feedback on their ability to identify main points and supporting details. This clear feedback helps teachers to plan remedial activities or advanced tasks to meet the literacy goal. The second point is alignment with PNG's National Education Plan. Standard-based assessment aligns assessments with PNG's educational priorities, ensuring students gain relevant skills for local industries and sustainable development. Example, in secondary classroom, a standard for grade 9 might be to explain the impact of deforestation on ecosystems in PNG. through standard-based assessment, students are assessed based on their understanding of ecosystem interactions and sustainability practices, preparing them for roles in industries like forestry and environmental management. The third point is mastery-based learning and improved instruction. Standard-based assessment emphasizes on mastery allows students to learn at their own pace, reducing knowledge gaps that can accumulate over time. Example, in mathematics, for a competency such as solve linear equations, SBA ensures that every student masters this skill before moving to more complex concepts like quadratic equations, supporting solid foundation knowledge. And our last point is targeted support for student needs. Standard-based assessment data helps identify individual student strengths and weaknesses, allowing teachers to provide differentiated instruction. Example, in primary science, if a grade 5 standard requires students to classify plants and animals, SBA might reveal that some students struggle with plant classification. Teachers can then reinforce this skill through targeted lessons, ensuring that all students meet the standard.
Continuing on from here, developing assessment items aligned with specific learning standards. Creating effective assessment items for SBA involves designing tasks that directly measure students' mastery of the targeted standards. Here are some of the examples that we have given. One example is TVET program. Okay, subject is carpentry, TVET level 1, on the module titled Safely Operate Power Tools to Perform Precise Cuts on Woods. Assessment task: provide a task requiring students to make precise cuts on a wooden block using a circular saw, observing safety protocols. Criteria: precision of cuts, adherence to safety protocols, and correct handling of equipment. Okay, continuing on, another example is science. The subject would be environmental science in grade 9 standard. Analyze the effect of human activities on local ecosystems. Assessment task: students write a short essay analyzing how deforestation in PNG impacts biodiversity, soil erosion, and water sources. Criteria: understanding of ecosystem concepts, depth of analysis, and use of relevant examples. Each assessment item is designed to directly address the standard with clear criteria that enable students and teachers to see if the specific learning goals have been met. Okay, to conclude our presentation, the implementation of the standard-based curriculum, or the SBC, in Papua New Guinea has enhanced educational quality by establishing clear, measurable learning objectives. This structured approach has improved instructional consistency, accountability, and alignment with global standards. However, the effectiveness of SBC is limited by challenges such as resource shortages, inadequate infrastructure, and a lack of quality teachers, particularly in rural and remote areas of Papua New Guinea. Okay, recommendations: and teacher training and support. Continuously, professional development programs should be offered to equip teachers with the skills necessary to effectively implement SPC, especially in the areas of lesson planning and assessment. Mentorship programs and digital training platforms could support teachers in rural areas too. Okay, recommendation number 2, resource allocation for rural and remote schools. The government should prioritize the distribution of textbooks, teaching materials, and digital resources aligned with SBC to underserved regions. Investment in mobile and digital education platforms can help bridge the access gap for students and teachers in remote areas. Recommendation number 3, monitoring and evaluation framework. Establish a structured monitoring system to evaluate the effectiveness of SBC implementation across different regions. Regular assessments and feedback from educators can inform adjustment to curriculum delivery and resource allocation, ensuring SBC objectives are met. Okay, recommendation number 4, focus on inclusive education. Incorporating inclusive practice within the SBC framework can help address the needs of diverse learners, including those with disabilities. Developing adaptable curriculum, materials, and training teachers in inclusive strategies will promote equitable access to quality education. The other recommendation is community and stakeholder engagement. Encouraging collaboration with local communities, NGOs, and international educational organizations can provide additional support and resources to implement SBC effectively. Community involvement can also promote a more culturally responsive curriculum that resonates with PNG's diverse population. Thank you, and that's the end of our presentation.